So what's the biggest myth about MIM programs that you realized after getting there?
The myth is that they're not that valuable, but the truth is that they're very, very valuable, and they're exactly as the same what IIMs offer in India. So that's what it is.
Perfect. Everybody should have NGO experience before they start applying for a management program.
That's the biggest myth that ever. Absolutely false.
What was your biggest apprehension before you started your MIM?
Would I be able to get a job in France?
What was the most important resource in finding a job? The career center, the alumni network, LinkedIn, or the corporate partners of the school?
LinkedIn, without a doubt.
Hi everyone, this is Piyush Ranjan. I'm the founder and chief consultant of Management Masters. We are a boutique admissions consulting firm for the top MBA and MIM programs around the world. In today's video interview, we have Pranay Bansal with us. Pranay graduated from HEC Paris MIM in 2018, and since then he has had a very interesting career journey where he worked in investment banking first, and then he moved on to strategy consulting in London. So without further ado, let's start discussing with Pranay. Welcome, Pranay. Thank you for joining us. Could you give us a brief introduction about what you've been doing and how you've gotten there?
Thank you, Piyush. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to your session, and I'm very happy to share my experiences post MIM and before that as well. So currently, I am, as you mentioned in your introduction, I'm working as a consultant at Parthenon-EY in London. And I've been here for now about 2.5 years. And this was post my graduation from HEC Paris in 2018. And as far as my prior background is concerned, I am a graduate of Indian Institute of Technology, BHU, Varanasi from 2013, and have also spent a couple of years in ZS Associates post IIT before moving to HEC Paris, and then the journey forward at EY Parthenon. So yeah, happy to share all my experiences in these last 7-8 years post my engineering.
Absolutely, really, really nice to have you, and thank you for that. Talking about your previous journey, we'll start with the pre-MIM experience that you had, right? So you mentioned that you graduated from IIT and you worked at ZS Analytics. So what really led you to move out for an MIM? What made you start looking for an MIM at that point of time?
Right. So, if you look at ZS Associates, it is essentially like a consulting firm dealing in business and strategy, and though focused on a particular sector, which is pharmacy. So what I felt was that the education that I'd had prior to ZS Associates was purely technical in nature, technical engineering knowledge in nature. And for me to excel in the world of business, to excel in the world of strategy, or to excel in the world of corporate finance for that matter, I did not have any formal education or formal training in that. So I felt myself lacking in that sense, that if I have to progress or climb the so-called quote unquote corporate ladder, I need some kind of formal training or preparation. And the only way for that could have been to get a management education, right? Now, I know some people might argue that, it's something common sense, you'll just get it over time, which might be true to an extent. But, as with any other thing, preparation of formal education is very, very important. Then the next question in front of me was, where should I take it from? Should I strive for the IIMs in India or the ISPs in India, or look for something abroad? Then what I thought was an experience at an IIM or any other Indian institution would be very similar to what I've had at IIT. Similar kind of people with similar kind of backgrounds, and then the similar kind of rat race in the campus to get a job. So that's why I decided to take up an international experience or an international program. And the second motivation was also to see the world, because what I've generally seen, though it might not be like 100% true, perfectly true, but what I've generally seen is that in these IIM institutions and even in IITs, there's always a scramble of, okay, I should get a foreign internship, or I should get placement in a company that would take me abroad. That fascination for something overseas exists. So what I decided, that why should I get in that race of that, try to compete with a lot of people and then get a kind of a foreign exposure when I can directly get it by studying abroad at a relatively similar cost. So yeah, so these kind of factors motivated me or encouraged me to take up a master's in management, that too from foreign country.
That makes a lot of sense because, as you said, there's so many people who want that international exposure, right? But then I think in your case, the next question that I have is, why did you enroll? Because you already had 2 years of experience when you enrolled for the MIM, right? So why did you not wait a few more years and then go for an MBA rather than, doing an MIM right away? So is there any particular reason why you didn't decide to wait for an MBA rather than going ahead with your MIM?
There is no specific reason as said that why didn't I wait for my MBA. But when I look back, I see that like waiting for another 3-4 years is a very, very long time. And I personally felt that if I have to wait that long, my motivation for doing a management course, would go down by the year. And in addition, had I continued to stay with ZS Associates, my career would have already taken a certain kind of path, and I would have to continue with that. And what I mean by this is that ZS Associates is focused on pharmaceutical kind of data analytics type of consulting. And had I stayed in that for like 5-6 years and then gone for an MBA, probably the post MBA path then would not have been very different. Would have been very difficult for me to kind of change tracks of that sort, like change from that data analytics form of consulting that ZS does to something more strategic or something more investment banking. And that is something that I've seen in MBA graduates as well. Like for them, if they worked in a particular sector for 6-7 years, then they do the MBA. Then post the MBA, 90% of them land up in a very similar kind of role. So the MBA does do value addition, but if you want to experience more things, it's a bit too late, I guess, in your career journey to do that.
Okay, so just to maybe rephrase or sort of reframe your sort of the positive outlook for the MIM, that would be it allowed you to move, your sectors and industries much more freely compared to what an MBA would have done potentially like 3-4 years down the line. Would that be correct?
Exactly. That is true, and that's absolutely true. And another aspect of the MIM that I did at HEC Paris was that they have a concept of a gap year, where you can take up whatever you want to do essentially. So I ended up doing 2 very different things, like 6 months each. For the first part of 6 months, I did corporate strategy in AXA in their headquarters. AXA is an insurance firm in their headquarters in Paris. And for the latter part of 6 months, I did investment banking. So cumulatively by the end of it, so I had like 2 years of ZS pharma data analytics kind of consulting experience, 6 months of corporate strategy in an insurance firm, and then 6 months of investment banking. And that investment banking was mostly in consumer goods. The sector was consumer goods. So this kind of flexibility and exploration of different industries, different career paths, probably wouldn't have been possible with an MBA. It was only the MIM program which gave me this flexibility and these opportunities.
Makes a lot of sense. So obviously, you've decided to go ahead with an MIM program. You want to apply for the MIM program. So what were the first steps that you took? Like, how did you go about it? And there are multiple different parts when it comes to the application part, right? So let's start with the GMAT or the GRE. So which one did you take, and how did you start working on that on the GMAT?
Right. So I took the GMAT, and that was the first kind of step, or the first thing that I thought about when I decided that I should go abroad. And it was a very kind of basic process or exercise that I followed. Like I think I got some kind of the standard GMAT books or whatever courses that were there way back in 2014, and then I prepared for I think 5 or 6 months before taking the GMAT. And luckily for me, it was that I got a decent kind of score of 730 in the first attempt only. So I didn't feel the need to take the GMAT again. So my advice to anybody would be, the first thing would be to take the GMAT very seriously, but at the same time also understand it's not like a CAT kind of an exam where the higher you score, the better it is. But yes, anything above 700, I think 700 should be something which everyone should target. And beyond that, from my personal experience and the people I know, it doesn't make a lot of difference whether you have 740 or 710 or 720. It's like the same thing. So, but yes, a good 700 plus kind of score is really important.
And when would you suggest people to take the GMAT? Because, for example, a lot of candidates who reach out to us, they are currently working on the GMAT program, GMAT test, or they continue working on the GMAT in parallel with their applications right until the deadline, right? So when would you suggest is a good time to get finished with your GMAT and then start focusing on the applications?
Right. So I think an important thing to consider out here is when would you apply, because most of these foreign schools have kind of different rounds of application. And if I'm not mistaken, the first round is somewhere in September or October of each year. Then there's a subsequent round in the winter, then one in spring. I think three, probably other schools might have one more round. So first of all, we have to decide which round we want to apply in. My suggestion would be it's better to apply in the first round always, because there are a lot of financial incentives that you, and when I say financial incentives, I think scholarships and all that kind of stuff, which are more front loaded in these programs compared to the applicants for the second and the third rounds. So if you decide to apply in the first round, that is like September, October, it's better to get with the GMAT stuff done by, say, June or like July, something like that. And for that to happen, probably start preparing, in December or November of last year for the GMAT, 6, 7, 8 months earlier. So which gives it like a comfortable amount of time to yourself to mentally prepare yourself for the exam. And also then once the exam is done in like June or July, whatever, we have another like 2, 3, 4 months to focus on the other part of the application, which we'll probably discuss in the coming minutes.
Absolutely. And now we move on to the next part. But before we go into the application details, how did you decide which schools? So you fixated on the MIM programs. You know you want to apply for the MIM. You have your GMAT score in hand. Then how did you choose which schools did you want to apply to?
Right. So I think there are a couple of factors which come into play into this. Now, whether we like it or not, or like whether people admit it or not, the biggest factor is how the school is ranked, right? Like that is a primary consideration. And I think there are many lists available, I think, but I'd say like the Financial Times list is probably the most credible and the most widely used. So that is the first kind of criteria. Then the second criteria is the geography, where the school is located. Because what happens, especially with the MIM program, that some of them are, or most of them are kind of located in non-English speaking, non-Anglo-Saxon world. They're located in France and in Switzerland, and some in Italy and as well, and Germany as well. So a lot of students are kind of hesitant from going to these geographies because of obvious reasons of culture, language, and the general kind of, there's kind of barrier between being Indian and studying in France and being Indian and studying in, say, the UK. So there's a clear difference. So that's a choice in front of us, that we see a school which is ranked very well, but it's, say, located in rural France, compared to a school that is not ranked very well, but it's located in London. So that's a choice that one has to make. So this is the second factor. The third factor is the cost. And what I've generally seen is the cost in Europe is significantly lower, especially in continental Europe, is significantly lower than the United States. So that is the third factor. And then there are other kind of non-kind of objective factors, I'd say, where you talk to alumni from your previous institutions or friends who might have studied in these geographies / schools, and get an opinion from them. But I think that's the least important of all factors, I believe. The first three, where you look at the ranking, look at the geography, look at the cost, and then make like an objective decision. Okay, this is the school where I want to go to. Just to add to that, some people might question, okay, why not looking at job prospects and all that kind of stuff, right? So that is inherently captured. When you look at the ranking of the school, the prospects of people getting a job is already factored in that ranking. So, so when I'm looking at the ranking, I'm essentially looking at how good it is in terms of future career prospects. And that can be topped up with that, that the fourth element that I talked about, which is speaking to your friends or family or whatever who has previously been in these locations.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's say if somebody, somebody does not have such people in the network who have previously gone for an MIM, how would you suggest that people could reach out to such to alumni or current students?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. That like a lot of people might not have any such connection. So I think the simplest and I think the most obvious way to reach out to them is using social media and LinkedIn in particular. Just messaging people who you see have a similar kind of background and have studied in these schools. Now, obviously, everybody will not reply, so it's a question of how many people you reach out to. So if you reach out to say 20 or 30 people, even 3 or 4, if they reply from those, even 10% of the people get back to you, which is a pretty good number. So just being rigorous in reaching out to people and absolutely facing no hesitation. Nobody will think anything. Just reach out to people, obviously in a professional manner. Reach out to them, and a percentage, a proportion of them will get back to you. And I have myself, discussed this with a lot of people who reach out to me, and I'm very sure that everybody else does as well. So that's the simplest and perhaps the only logical way to reach out to people. In addition, I know that all these schools now hold some kind of conferences or events in India, especially the French ones. In relation with the French embassy, they hold conferences in Delhi and Mumbai. So you can attend those where you have former alumni and former students of those schools. You can talk to them and get a sense of how things are done.
Absolutely. All right. So moving back to your application, right? One of the, I think the major chunk of the application, right? It's always about the essays. There's so many essays to write about, and there's so many things that schools always want to know about, right? So how did you start approaching the essays? How did you work on the essays, and how did you make sure that the thoughts that you were putting on paper they showed the admission committees a truer picture of yourself? And not just some ramblings in general.
Right. So yeah, the essays, as you said, are a very important part of the application. And if I have to kind of segment the essay, there are broadly two or three categories. So one is your professional journey, of course, like where you are currently and how you reached there. One is your motivation to do the course, be it MIM, MBA, whatever. And the third is also like your post-career goals, like what will you get out of this? And then there might be a fourth question around your personal life or like personal ambitions or whatever.
Currently HEC has a question on leadership values and like who is the leader you admire and what are the kind of leadership qualities that you
Okay.
have, things like that. So I think they've sort of modified the questions a little bit as well compared to like what they were 6 years ago. But how did you decide? How did you work on these essays? So yeah.
Right. So working on these essays. So the first thing is like this might sound very basic, but developing a full understanding of the question or why the question is being asked. Because a lot of people, and myself as well in my first draft, when I wrote the essay and showed it to somebody who had gone through the process, the first feedback I got was that you are not directly answering the question that is asked. Because when we write an essay, we tend to dither as we go through the body of the essay. So first of all, understanding the question perfectly well. Then once you've understood it, then developing a coherent, step-by-step logical structure of the story. That is very important. Going in a chronological order of your life journey or your professional journey is very important. Then the third part is like whatever you're saying should sound genuine. It should not be, we shouldn't like put in things which haven't happened or just to make our essay look better or look our journey look more attractive, add things which actually haven't happened. And the reason I say that is because the people who will review these essays, they have read thousands of tens of thousands of essays, so they would easily call out that okay, this looks genuine and this doesn't. So staying true to what we are actually is very important. But this doesn't mean that we have to make our essay boring. Like we have to add that some kind of color and flavor to it. And for that, we can, add some anecdotes of our professional journey, small anecdotes or personal journey or whatever, just to add a bit more color to it. And when you have a good draft of the essay, getting it reviewed by professional agencies or by people who have been successful in this endeavor in the past is very, very important. And I myself, I think, got my essay reviewed by 3 or 4 people and then incorporated all their comments. And that was way back then, as you know, in 2014. But now I think there's a lot of professional help available as well of getting those essays reviewed. So getting that done is very, very important. And then I think one final bit, I'd say is like when this whole process is over, just giving your essay to read to someone who doesn't know anything about MIM, who doesn't know anything about this process, totally detached, just getting a third person view that, because at the end of the day, it is just like a piece of, a piece of writing, right? Anybody can understand. So just giving it to somebody so that when that person reads it, he's also able to understand it.
Yeah.
Because the people who we will get it reviewed from, the 3 or 4 people, they would know why the essay is being written, and they will review it from a particular mindset. But if you make somebody else read it, who has nothing to do with all of this, and even if that person is able to understand your story, that means you've done a good job. So I think, yeah. So that's broadly what we can do to get the essays right.
I think there's one thing which goes around very quite often is if you want somebody to review your essay, you just give them the essay without the question, and once they've read the essay, they should be able to tell you what the question was.
Yeah.
That basically that the essay should have that clarity, that it should clearly tell you what the question was even without knowing it. But that's really nice advice. So out of all these 3 different things, or any other aspects of the entire application process for the MIM programs, right? What did you find the most interesting part? What was the most interesting part for you?
For the MIM application journey, you were saying?
Yeah.
I think the most interesting part was, I mentioned about these events, right, which a lot of B schools hold in some of the cities. So attending those events and getting to know about the school or the country was really interesting. And the reason I say it was interesting is that prior to those events, my understanding was just based upon what I saw on the internet. Their websites, some kind of videos, and so actually talking to real people. Students as well as like the management, because in some of those cases there were professors and all these people present there. So actually talking to them and getting a better understanding, getting a human understanding of what it is, and then making a decision. Okay, this school looks better than the other one, was really interesting. And also, a lot of these schools, obviously, they tend to market themselves that we are better than the other. They don't say explicitly like that, but there's an element of marketing as well. So the way they sell themselves and attract students, that was also interesting. So we have to be a bit objective in our assessment. We don't have to fall for all the jazz that comes in. But yes, attending those events is really helpful, just to get like a human understanding, because otherwise our assessment will be totally based upon digital, whatever comes in front of us in digital media. So absolutely. Yeah, that was quite interesting.
Absolutely, makes so much sense. All right, so now let's move on to your actual MIM journey, right? So now that you've applied, you've gotten into HEC Paris, and now you're in Paris and starting school. So as an international student in Paris, right? What were the biggest challenges that you really faced when you started going to school at HEC?
Right. So there were a couple of very obvious challenges, I think, that come to the mind that I faced, and then I'll talk about some more nuanced challenges that I faced. So the obvious ones was since it was France, it was totally new culturally. It's a big culturally big difference. Second, the language was, again, obviously a very different thing. These were the very 2 first things that had struck me when I started studying in the B school. Then, in addition to that, the thing that there you are on the campus or wherever you're staying, you're totally on your own. There's no support as such that you would kind of experience in an Indian campus. So just acclimatizing to that you are responsible for your own food, you are responsible for your own accommodation, all the nuance, the paraphernalia of life, you're totally responsible for that. And at the same time, you have to study. That is something, at least it took me some time to get used to it, because I was used to the comfort of Indian campuses, as we all know, where we get everything, without having to worry about anything. So that was a big difference in terms of life. So this was the life part of it. Then you talk about like the academic, or the more, the actual meat of the MIM program. So what we see out there, like there are people from all different kinds of places in the world. countries, sometimes we might never heard of these exist. Small countries, like, we might not have heard of these exist. So everybody has a different perspective. And what we understand is that people are equally intelligent. They're equally, I shouldn't say, like, you shouldn't take the word equally in its literal sense, but people are as understanding and as intelligent as we think we ourselves are. So we shouldn't kind of underestimate anybody. Everybody has reached there, so they're all quite intelligent people. And also appreciating diversity, not only in terms of how diverse we are in terms of how we look or how we lead our lives, but also diverse in our ways of thinking. So we could see, like, people from a particular country have a certain way of thinking, like we Indians have a certain way of thinking. So just getting comfortable with that, because generally for most of us who go out to study abroad, it is for the first time we're experiencing such an environment where you have, like, you're studying with international people. So just trying to, developing that sense of respect for everybody is quite important. And then the other aspect is, like, the way the teaching is done, or the way the lectures or the courses are delivered. It's more participatory, I'd say, compared to I've never studied in an IIM, so I don't know how it works out there, but certainly compared to an engineering college, I'd say it is more participatory, and you can challenge the professors and people who deliver their lectures in a more open kind of. People are more comfortable doing that. People are more comfortable accepting that kind of thing, which is again something different, and we tend to learn doing that as we go through the journey of studying. And then while all this is happening, the most important thing of why we are there is to look for employment opportunities. So again, that is something which is markedly different from what we see on Indian campuses, and it takes a bit of time for almost everybody just to acclimatize how things are done on the employment front.
All right, we'll come to the employment part shortly, but before that, like, coming back to the MIM journey, right? There's so many things happening. There's so many things happening in the campus. There's so many, as you mentioned, there's such diversity among your peers. There's everybody's from a different country, especially at a place like HEC, when I think the entire European, students from entire continent of Europe and around the world, they come to study, right? And there's so many things and events going on at all the times, right? So how did you make sure that you're still focused on what you want to do, or how did you make sure that, whatever goals that you had in mind, you were still working towards those and not really getting bogged down by so many things happening at a time, or just sort of getting astray?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important question, that a lot of things keep on happening at the same time, and we generally tend to get bogged down in that. So the important aspect here is that you talked about how did I stay focused on my goals. So what I have seen, that a lot of people are actually not very clear on what their goal is, right? Like somebody, you talk to somebody someday, okay, I want to get into strategy consulting in Paris. Then you talk to the same person like 4 weeks down the line. Oh, now I'm looking at investment banking. And then 2 months later, they'll say something else. So I think getting that clarity in your head that this is something that I want to do, or I want to go, be it in terms of the career path, be it any kind of career, be it marketing, be it strategy consulting, be it banking, be it anything else, getting clarity about that. Then getting clarity about which location I want to work in is very, very important. And it is perfectly fine to take time to develop that understanding. It'll not happen first day you land in HEC, you're absolutely clear, okay, I want to do strategy consulting in Paris, full stop. That's not going to happen. So taking that time, and how will you develop it? It's just like, when you try to understand the whole situation, you understand the job scenario, you understand how the process works by talking to people, by being involved in all the events that are happening, you'll develop an understanding in some time. But when that understanding develops, that this is what I want based upon whatever you have seen in whatever couple of months or so, and when that understanding develops, then it has to be absolutely clear that I have to focus on that, and I don't have to get bogged down by anything else. So just taking an example, for example, I decided that I want to get into investment banking, just for an example. And say I developed this after studying a bit of corporate finance, attending a bit of events, talking to people, looking at how quote unquote glamorous the life of investment bankers can be. When I develop this understanding, then I'll make sure for myself that any kind of events that are only, linked to investment banking, I'd only go into those, or I'll take up only courses which are, focused on corporate finance, or I'll, network with people who have been in the kind of domain. At the same time, I should understand that there will be things happening apart from this as well, around on strategy consulting, on private equity, on marketing, but they frankly don't matter to me because I have taken a decision in my head that I want to go here. So then I would only focus my energies on there. But it is difficult to do. It's very easy to say this, but it's difficult to stay focused. But if we are able to do that, then I think it becomes much easier to pursue comfortably with a clear mind, calm mind, that, okay, this is what I want. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. And I want to bring up one more thing before we move on to the next section. Is a lot of people who go into MIM programs, right? As you mentioned, they don't have that clarity exactly of what they want to do, especially for people like us who don't come from a management background. We come from an engineering background, where we go for a management degree to sort of identify which area we might want to work in, whether it's strategy or marketing or operations or maybe consulting or investment banking, because we've heard of all these things, right? But you don't really know what exactly do you want to do. So what would you suggest? How can those people get a better understanding? What can they do in the first year of their course, which can give them a better understanding of where they should really start focusing their energies on, in terms of finding internships or getting opportunities, or really putting their energies into?
Right. There are a couple of ways of doing this that, especially in the first year, there are a lot of projects, or what should I say, collaborations with business schools have with different companies. And these can be like 2 or 3 week projects as part of a course even. So we should take up as diverse courses as possible. And through those courses, we'll actually get to work with people who are working in these different fields, be it marketing, be it strategy, be it banking, be it whatever. And then we'll develop a better understanding of what the industry is and what the day-to-day job is. So that is one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is probably a very simple known way of speaking to people who have, networking with people who are working or have worked in these industries. And these kind of networking opportunities, believe me, they are more than ample in a school like HEC or ESSEC or like St. Gallen's. You'll have numerous events. So we should take every opportunity to speak to as many people as we want. These are the two primary things of how we can develop that understanding. And the third thing is like just taking a step back and thinking for some time, what is it that I'll feel comfortable doing? What is it I think aligns with my long-term goals? Because everybody has something in their mind. Okay, like 10 years down the line, this is where I want to be. What is the career path that will take me there? So just spending some time and thinking about what's happening around me and then taking a call. But I think the first two things that I talked about, like working with the people in the industry through your courses, and then talking to these people who are actually working in the industry, in networking events, is I think the two primary routes of getting that clarity in your head. And once you have the understanding of these two primary routes, just taking a step back and spending time with yourself, that, okay, this is what I now know about all the different career paths that can be. So out of these, which one do I think suits my personality or my long-term goals the most? So that's how perhaps people can choose.
Thank you for that. I think you really bring out the importance of thinking for self, how important it is to actually sit down and introspect and really think through as to what do you really want. Like and it's not possible, or it's not likely that you'll get the answer right away. So just spending time on it and revisiting the question whenever the need be. So again, we also talk about. I also want to bring about the really nice thing that we had, the Eiffel Scholarship, right? So for those who don't know, Eiffel Scholarship is a scholarship given by the French government to certain students where they provide a very decent amount of money every month, and it takes care of a lot of expenses for the students. So almost 1,500 euros or something, maybe something about that, but close to 1,500 euros per month, so that they can meet their living expenses very easily throughout their masters. So you were the recipient for the Eiffel scholarship. So how exactly was that, and how did it help you overall?
Yeah,
Tell
I
us
think it was.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a really, really nice scholarship, as you mentioned, by the French government, and I think the stipend is 1,500 euros a month for 2 years, for 24 months. So which is a quite a bit of amount of money. So I think in terms of the process, how it worked was that prior to the application, or when I was making the application, and again I come back to that point that we should make it in the first round, because Eiffel scholarship is again available to those who apply the first round, that is around September, October. So when you make your application and when you're successful in getting into a particular school, they will then apply for the Eiffel scholarship on your behalf. So we can't directly apply for it. It's the school, when I say the school, the business school where we get in, they apply on the behalf of their students. And what they'll ask us to do is probably write, like, again, a couple of essays around our professional journey, and about our professional journey, about our ambitions, our goals. These essays are not very different from the application essays that we make. So a lot of the content can directly be taken from our application essays. So then the school applies on our behalf to the French government that these are the set of students, international students, who we have admitted and we would like to present to the French government who can be eligible for a scholarship. And then the French government takes a call. And generally what I've seen is that if you have a decent GMAT score, if you have if you're from a decent academic background, you quite likely will get the scholarship. But again, caveating that not everybody gets it. It is I generally, like way back in 2015, I think around about 10 to 15 students from India used to get it every year. Probably the number hopefully has increased now. But yes, it is something. If you get it, it's quite a good amount of money. Another thing that I'd like to add is that you can obviously apply it in your first year when you're getting admission. Maybe if you're not able to get through in the first year, you can reapply in the second year as well, again through your school, like for second year as well. And I know quite a few people who did not get through in the first year but did get it in the second year. So
that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing. It's very interesting to know. All right, now let's move on to something which is, I think which will really drive the value from your journey for potential MIM candidates, right? And that's really about the career opportunities. Right? So the first thing that I want to talk about is, what were the biggest challenges that you faced when it came to starting to look for a job? Because you're studying in France, and French people are really sort of very possessive about the language, right? You need to. Everybody has this idea that you need to speak French. Without speaking French, there is absolutely no chance that you can actually land a job in France. So, how true is that claim? And if whatever the truth may be, how did you navigate that, and how did you really make sure that you were able to find jobs for, as you said, internships in France without speaking French? I'm assuming that you didn't speak French at that time.
Yeah. So I think the point about French people are possessive and proud of their language is absolutely true. Then the second point about like how difficult it is, or it's absolutely important to know French to get a job. There is some truth in that. So what I'll tell you is, like, I obviously did not speak French, and I even don't speak French now after spending 3 years there. I did manage to get 2 internships, and the reason or the journey for those internships is that, like, there are a lot of international companies which are headquartered in France. And AXA, the insurance firm, it's headquartered in France. So wherever all these international companies which are headquartered in France, they do take a lot of non-French speakers as well. Because at the end of the day, it is like a multinational company. It is their headquarters. They'll just not have French-speaking people out there. So they will accept non-French speakers, not only for internships, but also for full-time positions. Companies like AXA, where I worked, or BNP Paribas, the French bank, Société Générale, another French bank, Sanofi, pharmaceutical, firm headquartered in Paris. So there are quite a few like these international firms which are French and who accept French, non-French speakers as well. However, we have to bear it in mind that it will be not very easy to get a job without speaking French, but it is not undoable. It is doable. Now people will say, okay, you can get non-French speakers can get jobs in these kind of firms. Can they get jobs in professions like strategy consulting, which is obviously a very sought after profession for anybody who does an MIM from France? Now, getting a job in France in strategy consulting without speaking French is really, really hard, honestly putting it. And the reason is very, very simple and obvious, because in strategy consulting, as we might understand, there's a lot of use of the language to make your client understand what the analysis is, what the industry is, what the market is, and so on and so forth. And the clients are mostly French. And who are the clients? They're like small, medium and small enterprises, MSMEs of France, and they certainly don't have any international kind of non-francophone exposure. So for them, communicating in French is very, very important. So on the strategy consulting front, it's really hard. Then in banking, it's a bit easier because I also worked in banking for 6 months. So it's a bit easier in banking to get a job without speaking French. And again, the reason there is that in banking, there is not that much client interaction. It is mostly about there is a client, but it's not like strategy consulting where you're dealing with a client on a day-to-day basis. So in banking, it's a bit easier. And it's since more mathematical focused, more maths involved in quant stuff involved in banking. So the language part doesn't matter that much. And from my personal experience as well, the bank that I worked in, I was the only non-French speaker in the bank, and I was the only non-French person as well in the bank. So it was a boutique French bank. So it is very much possible, but yes, we have to work hard and to get it. And when I say work hard, I mean to say like we have to make as many applications as we can wherever we see an opportunity. We just have to apply without giving it much of a thought or whether I'll get here or not get here. Making an application doesn't cost anything. You just have to send your CV, probably write a cover letter, and that's it, right? So we have to be as rigorous as we can in our applications, and wherever possible, talk to those people who are working in those banks, in those firms, or whatever, just to assess how the things are and just develop a kind of a relationship, which can be helpful in writing your cover letter, or even when you're assessed as a candidate. They might say, okay, this guy reached out to me, so his level of motivation is high. He's a genuine applicant. So yeah, all in all, it is tough, but it is doable. But at the same time, you also have to understand that there are certain professions like strategy consulting where it is much harder than others to get in without speaking French.
So I think you brought it out. You brought it out very beautifully. So basically, I think one measure of how likely or how successful you're likely to be in a particular position or not, in order to be able to get that position, is the degree of client facing. If you don't speak French, right? So if it's like if you want to become a marketeer in France, that's probably going to be very difficult without speaking French. The same as strategy consulting, right? Where you need to interact, where you need to know the local language on the line. But if you're looking for back-end jobs, or where you don't really interact with the clients a lot, but rather more internally within teams, those are going to be much more likely. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Like wherever there is a greater degree of client interaction, and especially when I say clients of more mid-tier or tier 2 kind of firms, they're knowing French, native level French is absolutely essential. Wherever it's more of an internal kind of role, or like clients that are very, very high end, like for example, AXA being a client of say BNP Paribas, then it's okay. Both are like really international firms. So that nuance is there in terms of where we need to know the language and where we don't.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. I would also like to bring up the fact that because you moved your base from France to London, right? So you did your internships in France. You went back to HEC Paris for your to finish up your masters, and then you started working in London. So how difficult was it while you were looking for a job in London while sitting in France, right? And how did the HEC MIM help you in that journey?
Right. So I'll tackle the latter, the second part of your question first. So the HIC MIM is a very, very well-recognized brand in Europe and in London as well. There's a large alumni network working in very, very good positions and institutions out here in London. So having that on your CV is really something that stands out. So it means that if you have HC on your CV, you will be assessed in a serious fashion. Then in terms of the difficulty of getting into London, I think the greatest difficulty that we used to face that time, which does not exist now. I will talk about why it doesn't exist now, but I'll talk about what happened with me at that time in 2018 or 2017, was that the visas for the UK were really hard to get. A lot of firms would not like to sponsor the visa. Apart from the visa point, right? Like if you have studied from HEC, you have done good internships, you will be among the top candidates, applicants for a particular job. But as soon as they see that then you need a visa, you'll probably fall out of the radar. That was the biggest difficulty. But again, nonetheless, there were a lot of firms, especially the good ones, who did not care about the visa that much. And if you were having a good experience, you would be certainly called for an interview. Again, I'd reiterate the point that the important aspect here is rigor of applications. You don't know which HR or which company would decide to sponsor and which one would not. So making as many applications as possible is the key. Now, one thing that has changed from when I was doing the applications to the situation now, and changed for good, is our lovely Brexit. So
I think this is probably going to be the first time I'm hearing something positive about Brexit. So yeah,
yeah. So prior to Brexit, prior to 2020, when Brexit came into effect, the thing was that Europeans, like French people, German people, Italian people, they could apply to London and directly start working here without any visa requirements. For them, for a recruiter in the UK, recruiting a German or a French national was as simple or was similar, or exactly the same. You were recruiting somebody who's a British national. So French was the same as the British. However, for any non-European person, like an Indian myself or a Chinese or an American, they have to sponsor a visa because we were from outside the European Union. But now after Brexit, what has happened is that recruiters in the UK cannot recruit Europeans the same way they could do earlier. So they have to follow the same process for a French national as they have to follow for an Indian national. So, for example,
that's
so
interesting.
That makes it a level playing field, Piyush, and that is where I know we are being selfish in that sense. We are not,
it's basically so just to sort of chip in. It's not because our chances have increased; it's because others' chances have decreased significantly. That now we are at the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. We are on
that makes so much sense.
Equal footing. And what this does is that it opens a lot of jobs to us, because earlier what used to happen, like if for a particular job, there are, say, 10 applicants, right? And out of those 10 applicants, 2 are British in the sense like who have a British passport. 5 are say who have a French passport, and 3 are, say, Indians who have an Indian passport. And all are absolutely the same in terms of their professional experience, absolutely equally qualified for the job. So earlier what used to happen, the 3 Indian nationals, because of these visa restrictions, would be kind of filtered out because the firm would have to sponsor a visa for them. And they would consider only the first 7, the 2 British and the 5 French. Now what will happen is that they'll have to consider all 10, because it is a matter of fact that here in the UK, there is a shortage of qualified people. They have to bring in people from outside. Earlier, the easy route was to bring it through the EU route. Now that doesn't exist. So now when they assess applications, the French and the Indians and the Germans and everybody else would be on an equal footing, which gives us a very fair chance of getting in. And yeah, it increases our options quite a bit.
That's absolutely incredible, because yeah, I've been out of the EU for 2 years now, so I don't really thought about it from this particular angle, but it completely makes sense. And okay, just to reiterate here a bit, it does not mean that finding a job in the UK is easy for everybody who's watching, right? It's still going to be difficult. You still need to be very rigorous with your applications, as Pranay said. You'll still have to make those 50 applications, 100 applications probably. And if you're lucky, maybe not so many. But what you can rest assured with is that now you have an equal chance of getting a job compared to all the other people from who are not British, basically, if you're applying in the UK. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for that. It's absolutely incredible to know that, and this is also like super enriching for me. It's great to know. So one final question before we move on to the final section of our interview is, before you hopped onto your MIM journey, right? Before you went for your MIM, is there anything that you wish you would have known before that?
Interesting question. Actually, I knew about it, but I didn't do anything about it. So I knew that French, the more French I know, the better it is. And honestly, like I did take up French for a couple of months before moving to Paris, but I didn't take it seriously. And generally, what I'll say, like, when we get to know that we are moving to a particular country, there is generally like on average 6 to 10 months of time. So I think anybody who's moving to a country like France or Germany, they can invest the time in learning the language as much as they can, because that really, really helps in all aspects. I mean, obviously it does help in employment, but even otherwise, more integration into the society and all, and just experiencing the place more. It is way, way, way more helpful of knowing it to whatever degree we can. So that is something I think I could have done better. Despite knowing this, I didn't do it. That's my bad. But I'd advise to anybody that, getting to know about the language, about the country, and just getting to know as much as we can from variety of sources. There's no shortage of information. So so that's what I'd advise to all aspirants.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now we get into the last section of our interview, and this is something new that we've come up with as what we call the rapid fire run. No prizes for guessing what exactly it is. So we'll ask you very short, few quick questions, right? Just try to give your answers in one word or one sentence if possible. So the first question. So what's the biggest myth about MIM programs that you realized after getting there?
The myth is that they're not that valuable, but the truth is that they're very, very valuable, and they're exactly as the same what IIMs offer in India. So that's what it is.
Perfect. Everybody should have NGO experience before they start applying for a management program.
That's the biggest myth that ever. Absolutely false.
What was your biggest apprehension before you started your MIM?
Would I be able to get a job in France?
What was the most important resource in finding a job? The career center, the alumni network, LinkedIn, or the corporate partners of the school?
LinkedIn, without a doubt.
What is the most fun club or event that you were a part of at HEC Paris?
The wine tasting club. I think it was amazing. Just different ways of tasting wine.
I think that's the second time I'm getting that answer. Not from HEC Paris, but from a different school. That's great. Everybody loves wine now. And a piece of advice that you would like to give aspiring applicants.
I think the piece of advice is stay as motivated, ambitious, and encouraged as you can be, because that is something that'll help you navigate the whatever 2-3 years that you spend there. Ambition and motivation.
Thank you so much, Pranay. This has been incredible talking to you, and it's been a super fun interview for me, and very interesting things that you brought up. And I'm really looking forward to interacting more with you in the future. And thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Piyush. It's been really fun and interesting for me as well to revisit whatever I experienced, and happy to take any further questions or more interactions on this front.